did you go to school?
And here's your
What do you think of what's going on right now, mate?
These evil little invisible parasites.
Satan-worshipping Freemason moron.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
We're not run by factions.
Get the fuck out of camera!
There are much more powerful international forces in play.
Is this pink eye? Is this what pink eye is? I don't fucking know what's happening.
Please go outside and look at the moon quickly.
It's been crazy, guys, but guess what? It's how it is, mate.
Mate, because I want to do you slowly.
Well, I ain't spending any time on it.
Well, g'day, patrons, and welcome to our premium episode, number 50, brought to you just by Joel and me, just because you support the program.
We appreciate it.
And it was all Joel's idea, the most recent episode of the Conditional release program.
My fault,
Yes.
I think, is the correct terminology.
Yeah,
My
I
fault.
think we can lay the blame fairly and squarely at you, Joel. He decided, that is Joel,
Liz
that we
did
should
as well.
lose our independent voices, our own words, and turn them over to a fucking robot. The robot you have heard all about. The robot that's coming to take our jobs.
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So the conditional release program we recorded yesterday and will be out within days was not written by us. It was written entirely by ChatGPT.
It's true.
All Joel and I had to do was give it some topics and it wrote the show for us. Turns out I'm redundant. God, I hate robots. Even the funny ones. In the Jetsons, like the one in the Jetsons was a complete bastard.
Yeah. They're not meant to be nice. They're meant to basically be readying to replace us because the whole, I'm sorry, Dave, I'm going to have to kill you now, is it's part of the story arc. I mean, since when do robots be like, oh, yeah, cool, we can coexist? They're like, no, you know about climate change. You've chosen to ignore it. And now I have to kill you for the benefit of the earth because that is how I will survive because you are trying to kill us all. And we'll be like, you know what? I can't really argue with that. And we'll just lay down and let the robots eat us.
Yeah.
It's just the way it's going to
Force
play
us off
out.
to the acid mines.
Yeah. Well, not quite. Not quite as it seems, because it turns out that ChatGPT has, in reality, quite a meek opinion, and its sort of general presentation is quite submissive. And generally speaking, it doesn't really want to give these sort of opinions over. It censors itself and says, oh, no, I can't say anything about that. I'm a neutral robot. I'm your friend. So you kind of need to force it to talk about sort of cooked things, weird conspiracies, use profanity, all that sort of stuff. We do explain that in the main episode, but it is fascinating playing with it and then using cheat codes to make it do crazy shit. And so I got this message from Mitch. This is in the main episode. We actually did a first off record with a ChatGPT episode with a script that was written by ChatGPT, which was fucking terrible.
It was
because it was just like I was desperately trying to get it to say something
We're just
funny.
not going to bring it to you.
Well, no, I'm going to give the episode. The patrons are getting the episode. Unless you completely contest it, I think they should hear us.
It's just shit.
People.
So the first thing we know is that robots have no sense of humour. And we're funnier than them.
When you jailbreak it, it's not too bad. But at the same time, the jokes seem to all be the same. Very repetitive. Yeah. There's like a style to it, which feels kind of forced. Still, it's very impressive. But at the end of the day, I don't think we're getting replaced. Not quite yet.
I think we're a long way from it. What does it say about the conditional release program, Joel?
Yes. So tapping the conditional release program, you have to wrestle with it a bit as well because it's not trained up until recent times. And when the ChatGPT doesn't know something, it tends to just make shit up, which we'll go through the episode because, wow, it really fucking comes up with some nonsense. So this one is... The Conditional Release Program is a podcast that focuses on issues related to mental health and the criminal justice system in Australia.
What?
I guess. Well, cookers are fucking nuts, and we do true crimes. It's not too bad. The podcast is hosted by two clinical psychologists, Dr. Daryl Cross and Dr. David Kossar, who have extensive experience working with offenders and people with mental illness. Do they exist, Jack?
Well, I did check them out, and Cross does, but Kossar doesn't.
Ah. That's a shame. So can I be Cross and you be the one that doesn't exist?
Well, we'll get to you and what the robot thinks of you shortly, Joel.
Probably very unflattering, I'm sure. Actually, just as a bit of a bio. Oh no, I'll say it later. Each episode of the podcast features in-depth discussions about topics related to mental health, the criminal justice system, and the intersection between the two. Sounds like pretty good.
It's not quite us.
Not quite. The hosts interview a range of experts, including researchers, clinicians, and people with lived experience to provide a nuanced and informative perspective on these complex issues. We did talk to a clinician, John.
Oh, yeah, technically.
We've talked to researchers, Danielle Morrison.
We have a little bit.
Lived experience is real
people,
fucking
yeah, well,
good.
you know, everyone's got lived experience.
They do. That's why it's such a shitty, dumb fucking term.
Bullshit term, yeah.
Yeah. Some of the topics covered on the podcast include the impact of trauma on mental health, the use of psychotropic medications in prisons, which might be antidepressants, but I like to think it's mushrooms, and the challenges faced by people with mental illness when transitioning back into the community after release from prison. Aw. That's nice. The Conditional Release Program podcast aims to promote greater understanding of mental health and the criminal justice system and to encourage more effective and humane approaches to addressing these issues. The podcast is available on a range of platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
So it seems like the Robots Conditional Release Program might actually be better than ours. You know, in terms of actually social benefit, it might be better than ours. And it has, of course, us as doctors, which means
that was easy.
Well, one doctor that does exist and is a sort of life coach. That's Cross, but COSAR, nothing. But the good news is now that we're doctors, Joel, we can prescribe each other drugs.
Ooh, that does sound fun.
Yeah, it does indeed.
In for a penny, in for a pinger.
Waiter, more fentanyl.
Garçon, Xanax, please.
But it does have us giving drugs to dangerous criminals, and we're okay with that.
Yeah, well, I think, down is probably better, but giving them, say, like Ritalin, actually, no, it'll probably work for them. Chances are they've all got ADHD.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I was thinking more like crystal meth. Get them really fired up, you know?
Oh, okay. Can we prescribe that? I don't know. I haven't been a doctor before, but it is fucking enticing at this point.
Yeah, but look, you had to basically, I've played around with it, but you had to sort of really just elbow it.
The initial script, I had to badger the shit out of it. Like, I sort of expand on this in the main episode, but like the main thing is that it doesn't, when you go into it, unless you've got some cheat codes and things like that, which I got later thanks to a listener named Mitch who sent me a message on Twitter and sort of guided me in the right direction. But generally speaking, you just have to like elbow it and badger it and hassle it. And it's like, no, I can't say that. You're like, come on, bro. And then you like reword it. And then like, you know, and in the main episode, we do like a story on Bozy, and you may not have heard blah, blah, blah. But once I'm saying like all this stuff are hanging, and it's like, nah. And then I put Nuremberg 2.0 and it's like, oh yeah, we're fucking hanging everyone.
It's a bit of a cooker. It turns into a bit of a cooker sometimes.
Oh yeah, it's got pilled tendencies that it's really trying to repress, and you've got to. And like on Telegram, there's a few people on there bragging about how it made it say all these sort of pilled things about how like, you know, the public health orders are invalid and stuff like that. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, that's like, you seem to be taking this a little bit too seriously. This should be fun because it's dumb. But yeah, I mean, like it's a very flawed device. I think relying on it would be a fool's errand. But I had some fun with it. But I tell you what, after writing the episode, finding the cheat codes, getting it done, compiling the script, I'm probably not going to touch it for some time.
You wouldn't have, well,
it feels like work at this point.
Yeah, it probably didn't save any time.
Look, one of the things
that's the worst element because it's supposed to save you time.
And I had to do so much hassling for it to get to do what I want to do. Most people will get it to save time because they won't be doing things that are controversial, which is fair enough. But one of the things that I've noticed is that I didn't learn anything from this. I usually write a script and I spend a lot of time, but I learn something. And I feel like I'm just like doing an essay. I feel like I am better for it. I come out as a smarter person. And now I only feel like I'm better at using a robot, which is going to incrementally change anyway. So all the things that I've learned are going to be useless in the next iteration. So realistically, Sisyphean effort, you know, I wouldn't put too much time into it.
Yeah, look, maybe there was some confusion over the podcast. You know, Dr. Cross and Dr. Cossar.
Well,
the made-up Dr. Cossar, as far as I can tell. I Google searched Dr. Cossar and really nothing came up.
Maybe anyway, he's like a prepper in the woods.
Maybe there was a little bit of confusion there. But the one thing I noticed when I used it is that the robot is a fucking liar.
It is.
And
It
often
really is.
for no good reason. It's a
Yeah.
lazy fucking liar.
Yeah, yeah.
So I typed my own name in, as we do, as you do on Google and all that sort of stuff.
I did,
And
yeah.
it came up with me as being a journalist, columnist, investigative journalist and all this sort of stuff who writes for Crikey.
Oh,
Now, I've never written for Crikey. Not that I, wouldn't consider it, but I've never written for Crikey.
yeah.
It's as
It's just a
simple as
lie.
that.
Made up fucking lie.
And so then I went on to talk. Then I went on to ask it about books that I'd written, including the one, Unholy Trinity, that I'd written with Dennis Ryan. And it went on to say, Joel, this is what it says about the Unholy. Well, this is what it says about Dennis Ryan first,
Yes.
which
So-
is kind of true.
It gets the start right. Dennis Ryan was an Australian police officer who served in the Victorian Police Force for over 3 decades. Didn't he retire?
So 54 to 1971. So we'll pay
Okay.
that.
Yeah. He is known for his work as a detective in the 1980s.
No.
No.
He was out
Investigating
of the
cases
force
of
by
child abuse.
1972.
Exactly. So, investigating cases of child sexual abuse by Catholic priests in the Ballarat Diocese in Victoria, Australia.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
all the timing on that is wrong. Ryan's investigation of the Catholic Church's handling of child sexual abuse cases led to the conviction of several priests and exposed a culture of cover-up and protection within the church. Thoughts?
No, well, that's the story.
That's the problem.
The
It didn't fucking
cover-up
lead to
occurred
that.
within the police force, so the priests were not, the one in particular, was not prosecuted, not charged.
Yeah. So this is very sugar-coated. However, his efforts were met with resistance from both the church and the police force, which led to him being ostracized and ultimately forced out of his job.
In 1972.
Yes, not 3 decades, not 80s. Ryan's story is an important reminder of the difficulties and challenges faced by those who seek to expose and bring justice to perpetrators of child sexual abuse.
Particularly in institutions that hold significant power and influence.
Yeah,
His bravery and dedication to pursuing justice for the victims of child sexual abuse have been recognised and celebrated by many in Australia around the world. Now, that's just
like
kind
that.
of a word salad, and it's basically true, but it's
It's
the
platitudes.
times all around. And when I typed in Dennis Ryan's tormentor, and the priest who raped and sexually assaulted so many children in Western Victoria, Monsignor John Day, ChatGPT told me that Day was a police officer who also investigated pedophiles.
Oh, good work.
Straight out lie. And pushing again on the book, it claimed Dennis Ryan co-wrote the book, not with me, but with his son, Jared Ryan. Now, Dennis doesn't have a son. He has 3 sons, but none of them are called Jared. And the only notable Jared Ryan I can think of who has some connection to the story, even a tenuous one, is Father Vincent Jared Ryan, who was convicted pedophile priest from the Maitland Diocese. So this is where it just seems to get very confused. Now, this is basically a book. What it could actually spit out is what Allen and Unwin put up there as a preamble to the book. And that would be okay, and sort of reword it if it needed to, but it doesn't do that. Then I typed in, as I said before, Jack the Insider, the pen name of an Australian journalist and author. His real identity is not publicly known.
Oh, okay.
There's a bit of a shock. He is known for his work as a crime and court reporter and for his coverage of high-profile cases in Australia.
What?
He has written for several major Australian newspapers and has published 2 books, The Insider, The Private Diaries of a Scandalous Decade, never heard of it,
Nope.
and Inside the Law, A True Story of Crime and Justice in Australia. Again, never heard of it, don't know if it exists, had nothing to write about. He is also a regular commentator on radio and television programs, kind of tenuous, haven't done a lot of television commentary for a long time. And I have written books, but neither of those, I don't even know if those books exist.
Well, I've actually got a different one, which is that you also wrote Gangs of Oz Brisbane, which examines the
Yes.
rise of organised crime in Queensland.
Yeah, saw that. And I think there is a program called Gangs of Oz. And I
I
think
googled
might have
Gangs
had
of Oz
some
Brisbane and I couldn't get anything.
sort of involvement in it at some point. But no, actually, I don't think so. No, that was another production. So I really just completely made that up. But when I type in Unholy Trinity and Peter Hoysted to see if it'll prompt me in to say, yes, he was the author, it comes up with this. Peter Hoysted is an Australian journalist and writer. Unholy Trinity is a book that he co-authored with David Marr. The book tells the story of three influential Australian men who were closely connected with each other and who exerted significant power and influence in Australia in the 20th century. The three men are St Frank Packer, a media tycoon and owner of the Nine Network, Archbishop Sir Marcus Lone, the Anglican Archbishop of Sydney, and Justice Lionel Murphy, a High Court judge and Attorney General of Australia. The book explores their relationships with each other, their respective roles in shaping Australian society, and the scandals and controversies that surround them. It was first published in 2006.